Hey guys, it's Kelly again and welcome back to my channel. For this video, I'm going to talk about some of the different things that I've observed about Germany as an American living here. And what's better than seeing a crazy girl walk down the street talking to herself into a camera? All right, let's go. I think when a lot of Americans think about Germany, they immediately think about beer and Oktoberfest. And I was really surprised to actually learn how popular wine is, how many wine fests there are. And I'm living in wine region, all up and down the Rhine. There are so many vineyards producing just tons of wine. Before moving to Germany, I of course knew about Oktoberfest and I knew about Christmas markets, but I did not realize how many fests there are in Germany. I feel like I stumble across fests all the time, whether they're in Mainz or in other cities in Germany that I'm traveling to. They're everywhere. I had no idea what fasching was before I moved to Germany, and I know that I'm kind of cutting this short, I'm not really giving it the explanation it deserves, but it's basically like the German version of Mardi Gras. Everybody gets dressed up, they're partying, there are parades. It's a huge day in Mainz, and I think Cologne has another, one of the bigger celebrations in Germany, and it's a lot of fun. One of my favorite things about Germany is the public transportation. It is so much more prevalent here, and I think that's pretty well known that in the US we just don't have a lot of public trans, and I hate it. But I love in Germany how like every city has a train station and you can get anywhere for pretty cheap. I mean, the ICE trains start running really high, but the regional train prices aren't that bad. And then if you can't get a train there, then you can take a bus. The buses go everywhere. And of course we have trains, we have metros, we have buses. The metros and the buses are pretty much just in the major cities. This is the train station in Mainz. I've been to that train station a lot. I think it's relatively user-friendly. I haven't really had too many issues, but I think I actually might make a video about riding a train in Germany. And there's a tradition that I learned about in Germany where a couple that just got married might have a ribbon tied to an antenna or the windshield wiper on the back window, and they're supposed to keep it on there until it falls off for good luck for the marriage. I don't really know if that's like a big tradition in the US. I've never heard of it. I have seen couples have their car decorated for the car that they're gonna drive away from the ceremony or the reception in, and I don't really think there's any sort of tradition behind leaving those ribbons or those decorations on. I also have witnessed a few I don't know what they're called, but they're like a group of the groomsmen or the bridesmaids with the bride or the groom, and they'll go out and they'll sell little bottles of liquor, and from what I understand it's to help raise money for the wedding, or maybe it's just to help pay for the bride's drinks that night. But I've just seen big groups of people running around dressed a little crazy and clearly inebriated, having fun like this. I laughed pretty hard when I learned that Germans call cell phones handies, because that is not what handy means in America. Germans are, in my opinion, collectively pretty healthy people. They seem to place a high emphasis on exercise. They have really great food regulations. But one thing that I was just really surprised by, because it clashes against this seemingly very healthy outlook on life, healthy lifestyle, is that a lot of people in Germany smoke. It is a very stark contrast between what you would see in the States. And I really just don't understand how smoking is still so popular here when we know how bad it is for you. I even see advertisements for tobacco products here, and those have been outlawed in the States for a really long time. I think before I was born, or maybe shortly thereafter. after. I mean, they even have cigarette vending machines, which is crazy to me. They look like this. But I guess in an attempt to deter people from smoking, the tobacco products here have like really, really disturbing and disgusting pictures of like rotting organs or someone dying or a baby. And it's like a big campaign to try to address how dangerous smoking is. And cell phone plans are way cheaper here than they are in the US. We are getting straight robbed in the States with our cell phone plans. Can anyone in the comments tell me why that is? When I first moved here, I started to notice all of these gold tiles like in the ground, and I finally took the time to look at them and realize what they were. They're known as stumbling blocks, and they're put into the ground in front of the last known address for people who were murdered during the Holocaust. The block shows the name of the victim, their birth date, death date, and where they died. And when I went to look up those stumbling blocks, I learned that they're actually really controversial. Some people agree with them and some people do not. I noticed that there were a few stores that had Mick in front of it, and I came to learn that Mick means discounted or cheap. Which to me, that feels slightly racist, and I've never even been aware of any sort of stereotype that Scottish people are supposed to be cheap. This is the Romer Passage, which is nice to be able to walk through because it's cooler in the summer and then warmer in the winter, and it's got a bunch of shops and restaurants. Germans are all issued a national ID, and they have an obligatory identification law, which means that you have to have that ID on you, and the police can stop you and ask to see your ID. Or at least that's how I understand it. If I'm wrong, please put it in the comments. I feel like German dogs can go everywhere. I haven't looked into the laws, but I see them out and about in public a lot. I've seen them on trains, in stores, in restaurants, and it seems like that's perfectly fine. But in America, there's a lot of places where you can't take dogs. There's health codes against bringing dogs into restaurants in certain cities. Of course, it's state by state, county by county, city by city, but you don't really see dogs out in public as much. We even have hiking trails where dogs are not allowed. I get the feeling that Germans tend to marry and have kids at a much later age, whereas in the States, I think there's like still this societal pressure for people to get married and start having a family way early on in life. I'm gonna be honest, when I first started riding my bike around Germany to get to work or wherever I was going, I only paid attention to the signs for cars. In the States, bicycling, I feel like isn't as popular, and so we don't really have that many signs directed towards bicyclists. That is not the case in Germany. There are actually a ton of signs directing bicyclists where they can go, what speed they can go, where they can't go, and I very quickly learned to start paying attention to these signs. They look like this. If I understand this correctly, this is a pedestrian zone. It's a walking area. We're going to walk through it next. And bicyclists are free to ride on market and event-free days, and they have to go at a walking pace. In a lot of ways, Germany appears to be more liberal or more socially progressive than the US. They're way more comfortable with sex and nudity. Their censorship laws are far more relaxed. I think you can swear on TV like any word and it's not an issue. And you're allowed to drink in public. But in a lot of ways, they're not. Like, I was really surprised to learn that gay marriage was legalized only a year ago. I walked out of my apartment and I saw all of these celebrations going on. This was like a year ago, I think, and it was because gay marriage had finally been legalized here. Also, it's not legal to smoke weed here, whereas that's becoming more and more legal across the states. So this is the Gutenberg Platz. It's an awesome area. As you can see, there are some restaurants that set out their tables for people to be able to sit and enjoy the outdoors and watch the people go by. The buildings are all really, really pretty. And several days throughout the week, there's a market held here. And when the weather starts getting nice, they start having wine available at this market. It's called the Frühstück Market, which means breakfast market. They'll be selling wine at 10 in the morning and everyone will be out here drinking, having a good time. And again, that's a really big difference from what I remember in the States. You can get a cup of wine from one of the wine tents and just walk away. Whereas in the States, if it's a sort of event that allows beer, there is no way that you would be able to leave the premises of that event that are probably marked with a fence or some sort of boundary and walk away with alcohol in your hand, because we do not allow public drinking. But I will say there are some cities that do allow public drinking. There is a city in Montana that I've been to that I know allows public drinking, for example, and I think New Orleans even allows public drinking. Mainz is where Johannes Gutenberg is from, and yes, that's Gutenberg as in the Gutenberg Press. And so they have a Gutenberg Platz and they have a museum dedicated to him, and it has some of the original Bibles and some of the original printing presses. And it's pretty cool because you can go in there and actually use one of the presses to make something and they let you take it home. Of course, I knew that the Berlin Wall came down right about 30 years ago, but what I didn't know is that Germans actually pay a specific tax to help try to continue to economically rehabilitate East Germany, because they're still suffering some of the consequences from that time period. I also learned that this tax is quite controversial.
In the US, I've never seen crosswalk lights be in the form of characters. This is the Mainzelmädchen character.
So there seems to be a pretty strong American influence here in Germany that I didn't expect. I didn't expect to see as many English words, whether it's on business signs or on t-shirts or wherever. I was really surprised by that. And I'm actually really curious what Germans think of that. Is that annoying to you? Do you like it? Do you even notice it? I am in Fischerplatz right now, which is this little area with a green space, and it's one of my favorite places in Mainz, and I actually used to live on Fischerplatz before I moved in with my boyfriend. This is my old place. And these doors actually open up to a little parking area that I was able to park in. And it definitely demonstrated to me that cars are just a little smaller here than they are in the US. It's rare to see a pickup truck. You don't really see the big SUVs we have in the States. And I could barely fit my car into this parking area. Not just the space, but the lane that led to my parking spot was so tight and very difficult to back in and out of. Another difference is that Germany and a lot of other European countries write their addresses differently. So we will put the house number and then the street after it, whereas here you put the street and then the number. So I would have said that I live at 21 Fischtorplatz if I was thinking in the American way, but here in Germany it's Fischtorplatz 21. I feel like I can put my address out there because I don't live there anymore. The reason why I loved where my apartment was so much is because not only was it at Fischtorplatz and really close to the wine fest and everything that was going on in Mainz, but also because it's really close to the Rhine. And there's this path that goes all up and down the Rhine where you can either walk or run or ride your bike on. The Rhine is a major waterway in Germany, and not only do cargo ships go up and down it, but there's a lot of cruise ships. You have luxury cruises and then more, I would say, casual ferries. Brothels are legal in Germany, and while I knew that, I didn't realize when they say red light district, referring to that very particular district in Amsterdam, it's named that after the buildings with red lights that signify the fact that it's a brothel. Like, I just never put that together, that when you see a building with fluorescent red lights, that's what it is. Whereas in America, I feel like we have fluorescent lights everywhere of all different colors. It doesn't mean anything. For all my gamers out there, I learned that the video game versions for PC is way more popular in Germany than the versions that are made for specific gaming consoles. When I went snowboarding in the Alps, I learned very quickly how much more popular skiing is here than snowboarding. I feel like when I would go in the States, you'd actually see a lot of borders. Maybe it'd even be like 50-50, but in the Alps, it was by far dominated by skiers with very few borders. Germany has elected a woman as their chancellor for 13 years in a row now, which is different because I feel like in the US, a lot of people can't even fathom the idea of having a woman as president. There are a lot of ice cream shops in Germany, and I feel like that's a big difference. Yes, there are ice cream shops in the States, but I feel like there are far fewer in the States than there are in Germany or in Europe as a whole. And some of the bigger ice cream shops in Germany have these really, really elaborate sundaes. And they have this dessert called spaghetti ice, which I think is like geared toward kids. And it's actually ice cream that's really, truly shaped to look like spaghetti, or even spaghetti carbonara. So along with writing addresses, another thing that Germans write differently is the date. We often put the month first, and then the date, and then the year. Whereas in Germany, they'll put the date first, and then the month, and then the year. And that can get a little confusing. Another thing that can get confusing is that when writing numbers, they use a period where we use comma and vice versa. So if you're saying $2,000.34, it'll be 2.000 comma 34, whereas in the States it would be 2,000.34. A little bit of a difference. I probably should have talked more about this when I was at the train station, but I think it's entirely feasible to be able to live in Germany without a car, depending on where you work, because the cities are so walkable. There are bicycle paths everywhere where you don't even really need to be on a road. And if you are on a road, there are bicycle lanes. It is so bike friendly. And yeah, I mean, the public transportation, like I said, is on point. Whereas in the States, I feel like it is very difficult for you to be able to live without a car unless you live in a major city. I'm just thinking about the places I've lived and where I grew up, and I would have to walk like 6 miles just to get groceries. This is one of my favorite parts of Mainz. I love walking here. Of course, on a day when everything is open, it's a little bit more lively and bustly, and everyone's shopping and eating and enjoying themselves. Bars in Germany do not have a fixed, legally mandated closing time like we have in the States. In the US, the bars have to close at 2, but in Germany, you could be out drinking at a bar all night long as that establishment wants to stay open that late. So it's really nothing to see someone stumbling out of a bar Sunday morning after an entire night of drinking, or seeing a bunch of drunk people or hungover people on the train in the early morning. I have seen it a lot in my travels here. I think there are a lot of Americans who might not think that our fast food restaurants are over here in Germany, but they definitely are here. And as an American living in Germany, I've actually gone out of my way even more to avoid going to McDonald's or Burger King or KFC, because I feel like it is a cliche for me to go to one of those restaurants. I think Mainz is your typical German old city, or Altstadt as they say in German, where you have old buildings that survived both world wars among new buildings that were built probably where old buildings had been destroyed. Like right behind me, you can see that juxtaposition between buildings. There are a lot of differences between Germany and the US that I've noticed. These are really just a few. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel to catch those. I'm gonna go and try to find some coffee and enjoy this beautiful morning. Thanks for joining me on this walk, guys. Bye.